In the quiet moments of reflection, we often ponder the fleeting nature of life and the losses that accumulate over time. Gabriel García Márquez, a literary giant, never penned a work called Mortal Shadows, A Century of Loss, yet his oeuvre is a profound meditation on these very themes. Today, we delve into how his stories illuminate the human condition, offering solace and insight into our own mortal journeys. Through magical realism and poignant narratives, Márquez explores how death and loss shape identities and histories. His characters navigate centuries of solitude, love, and decay, inviting us to confront our fears with a gentle, ironic wisdom. A man kills another over the pride of a fighting cock. The spear, its tip fashioned from a sharpened blade, finds its mark, and Prudencio Aguilar falls to the dusty ground, a surprised look on his face as the life drains from him. José Arcadio Buendía, the killer, feels the weight of the axe settle upon him, not like a stone, but like a fine, persistent mist. It is this mist, the shadow of a deed done, that will follow him across rivers and through jungles, compelling him to found a town of his own, a place so solitary that death itself might forget to visit. But death does not forget. And neither does Prudencio Aguilar. In the world Gabriel García Márquez builds, the past is not a foreign country. It is the room next door. Its inhabitants do not stay buried, they come back, not with chains and frightful moans, but with a quiet, heartbreaking persistence. The ghost of Prudencio Aguilar is the first of these mortal shadows to appear to the Buendía family. He is not a monster. He is a presence of profound melancholy, his throat still clotted with the esparto grass plug José Arcadio used to staunch the wound. He appears in the Buendía home, overcome with loneliness, wanting to talk. He is the physical embodiment of guilt, a memory so potent it takes on flesh and form. He is the reason they leave their home. José Arcadio Buendía, tormented by the apparition, cries out to his wife, Ursula, "We will not stay here. We will go to a place where no one knows us and we can begin again." But one cannot begin again when the past is packed in the luggage. The ghost of Prudencio Aguilar, in a way, is the true founder of Macondo. It is a town born from a flight from memory, yet it becomes a place where nothing is ever truly forgotten. This is the central mechanism of the novel. Time is not a straight line, an arrow shot from birth towards death. It is a circle, or perhaps a spiral, turning back on itself. The Buendías are haunted not just by literal ghosts, but by the ghost of their own history. The names repeat, the Aurelianos, the José Arcadios, and with the names, the fates repeat. A son is born with the same solitary nature as his great-grandfather, a daughter inherits a capacity for bitterness that echoes an ancestor she never met. They live under the shadow of events that occurred long before their birth, reenacting dramas whose scripts were written by the dead. Imagine Ursula, the family's matriarch, living for well over a century. She watches her children and her children's children grow into ghosts of their former selves, or worse, into ghosts of their ancestors. She sees the same flaws, the same passions, the same tragic ends play out time and again. For her, the house is not just filled with the living, it is crowded with the dead. They sit in their favorite chairs. They wander the halls. The past is so present it is almost solid, a feature of the architecture. This is what García Márquez illustrates so masterfully: memory is not a recollection, it is a haunting. And in Macondo, every living person carries the weight of 100 years of ghosts on their shoulders. The decline of the family is not a sudden collapse, it is a slow, inevitable erosion, worn down by the ceaseless tide of its own past. The curse that hangs over the Buendía family, the one prophesied in the parchments of the gypsy Melquiades, is not one of fire or plague, but of something far more intimate: solitude. The novel's title is not merely a measure of time, it is a diagnosis. For 100 years, the Buendías are born, they love, they fight, and they die in a profound state of isolation. This is the great loss that defines their century. It is the loss of connection, of true, selfless understanding. This is not the solitude of a hermit who chooses to live apart from the world. It is a deeper, more corrosive condition that thrives in the very heart of the family. Colonel Aureliano Buendía, who fathers 17 sons by 17 different women and leads 32 armed uprisings, is perhaps the most solitary of them all. After years of war, he locks himself in a small workshop, endlessly crafting and melting down tiny goldfishes. He is surrounded by his fame, by the memory of his deeds, yet he is incapable of feeling. He has built a wall around his heart so thick that no one can get in, and he cannot get out. His solitude is a fortress. Think of a man I once knew, a watchmaker. He spent his days hunched over a tiny desk, surrounded by the intricate guts of timepieces. He could make them run backwards or forwards, but he could never quite connect with the people who wore them. His own family moved around him like planets orbiting a cold star. He was admired for his skill but was, in his essence, entirely alone, lost in the complex machinery of his own making. So it is with the Buendias. Each member of the family finds their own workshop of solitude. Amaranta, who loves her nephew but cannot admit it, spends decades weaving and unweaving her own funeral shroud, her hands busy with the work of death while her heart remains idle. Remedios, the beauty, is so disconnected from the world's desires and conventions that she simply ascends into the sky one afternoon, folding sheets in the garden. Her solitude is so pure it makes her lighter than air. The family is a collection of individuals orbiting a common name but never truly touching. They mistake obsession for love, lust for intimacy, and power for connection. And as the family decays from within, so does the town they founded. Macondo begins as a pastoral paradise, a village of 20 adobe houses, built on the bank of a river of clear water that ran along a bed of polished stones, which were white and enormous, like prehistoric eggs. It is a world of discovery and magic. But as the outside world intrudes, with its banana company, its politics, its violence, and as the Buendias turn inward, Macondo begins to crumble. The rains come, lasting for 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days, washing away the vibrancy and leaving a swamp of nostalgia and decay. The town's fate is inextricably linked to the family's. Its destruction is the final act of their long, shared solitude. The story of the Buendias is a tapestry woven with threads of fate and frailty. It is a chronicle of a loss foretold, a reminder that the deepest isolation can be found in a crowded house, and that a family, like a town, can die of loneliness. Perhaps it is time to walk through the rooms of your own memory, not as a tourist, but as a resident. See the figures who reside there. Listen to their quiet conversations. Acknowledge the shadows they cast, for it is in understanding our own ghosts that we might begin to break the cycle. The curse of solitude is also a curse of incomprehension, a fundamental inability to see the world from another's perspective. Consider José Arcadio Buendia's obsession with science and exploration. It is not a shared passion that brings the community together, it is a solitary madness. When he attempts to prove God's non-existence by photographing an empty space in the house, he isn't engaging in philosophical debate, he is retreating into a world of his own logic, a fortress built of magnets, astrolabes, and alchemical formulas. His wife, Ursula, does not understand his quest. His children see only a larger-than-life father descending into eccentricity. He speaks a language of invention that no one else in Macondo can learn. This linguistic isolation is a key feature of the Buendia solitude. They are brilliant, passionate, and articulate, but their words seldom bridge the chasm separating them from others. They talk at each other, not with each other. This failure of communication is tragically embodied in the relationship between Aureliano II and his twin brother, José Arcadio II. They are mirror images, yet they are separated by an invisible wall. As children, they swap identities as a prank, a game that subtly underscores their interchangeability and the family's inability to truly see them as individuals. As adults, their paths diverge into extremes. Aureliano II becomes a hedonist of monumental proportions, his life a whirlwind of feasts, music, and carnal indulgence, while José Arcadio II turns to asceticism and social justice, organizing the banana company strike. One embraces the flesh, the other the spirit of rebellion. Yet, they are two sides of the same solitary coin. Aureliano II's revelry is not about community, it is a desperate, loud attempt to fill his own inner emptiness. José Arcadio II's fight for the workers isolates him completely, making him the sole keeper of a memory the world conspires to erase, the memory of the massacre. In their old age, they die at the same moment, and in a final, cosmic confusion, are buried in each other's graves. The family, and the town, never truly knew which was which, a final testament to their lifelong, shared isolation. They lived and died as enigmas to everyone, including each other. The women of the Buendia family navigate their own, distinctly female, forms of solitude. It is often a solitude of endurance and silent management. Ursula Iguaran is the anchor, the pragmatic force trying to hold the family together against the centrifugal forces of their madness. But her practicality becomes its own form of isolation. She is so busy keeping the house from falling apart, fighting ants, managing finances, and trying to decipher the recurring patterns of her lineage, that she has no time for the quiet, intimate connection her spirit craves. Her solitude is the loneliness of the eternally responsible, the one who sees the disaster coming but is powerless to get anyone else to listen. She lives surrounded by people whose lives she manages but whose souls she cannot reach. Her eventual blindness is a powerful metaphor for this condition. She learns to navigate the house by memory and intuition, seeing more clearly than those with sight, yet she remains trapped within the physical and emotional architecture she has spent her life maintaining. Then there is Amaranta. Her solitude is a work of art, meticulously crafted from bitterness, pride, and unrequited love. Her rivalry with her adopted sister, Rebecca, over the affections of Pietro Crespi is not merely a love triangle, it is the forge in which her lifelong isolation is hammered into shape. When Rebecca wins, Amaranta does not move on. Instead, she dedicates her existence to the preservation of her own misery. Her declaration that she will marry Pietro Crespi only after Rebecca marries José Arcadio is a strategic move in a war of attrition, not a gesture of love. When Pietro Crespi, driven to despair by her endless deferrals, takes his own life, she does not mourn him, she internalizes the act as a twisted sort of victory. The black bandage she wears on her hand until the day she dies is not a symbol of mourning for him, but a brand marking her as untouchable, a permanent monument to her own self-imposed solitude. She finds a strange, sterile comfort in her lovelessness, choosing the predictable pain of loneliness over the terrifying vulnerability of love. Her refusal to love Colonel Geroneldo Marquez, a man who offers her genuine, patient affection, is her ultimate act of self-sabotage. She prefers the ghost of a rejected love to the reality of an accepted one. This theme of choosing solitude over connection is a powerful undercurrent. It suggests the curse is not entirely external, it is also a choice, repeated by each generation. The Buendias are afraid. They are afraid of the messiness of love, the demands of true empathy, the risk of being truly known. It is easier to wage wars, to decode parchments, to eat dirt, to throw epic parties, or to weave a shroud than it is to sit with another human being and build a bridge of understanding. The intrusion of the outside world, particularly the American Banana Company, serves to amplify this inherent solitude by transforming it from a familial trait into a societal condition. The company arrives like an alien force, superimposing its own reality onto Macondo. It builds a separate town, fenced off, with its own laws, its own language, and its own diversions. It treats Macondo and its inhabitants not as a place and a people, but as a resource to be exploited. This economic colonization creates a new layer of alienation. The people of Macondo become strangers in their own land. The massacre of the striking workers is the horrifying climax of this process. When the army opens fire on the crowd in the town square, they are not just killing 3,000 people, they are killing the town's collective memory. The official narrative immediately erases the event. There were no dead, the officers insist. Nothing has happened in Macondo, nothing has ever happened, and nothing ever will happen. This is a happy town. José Arcadio Segundo, the sole survivor who remembers, becomes the loneliest man in the world. His solitude is no longer just the Buendia curse, it is the solitude of the truth-teller in a world committed to a lie. He is treated as a madman. His story is a ghost that no one else can see. He finds his only audience in the young Aureliano Babylonia, passing on the memory like a secret, sacred text. This act of transmission is crucial. It ensures that the truth, however lonely, survives, waiting for the one person who can finally read and understand its full context. The massacre demonstrates how political and historical forces can enforce solitude on a massive scale, isolating individuals by invalidating their reality and severing their connection to a shared past. The magic in the novel, its celebrated magical realism, is not mere whimsy. It is the language of this solitude and memory. It is the way the internal world of the characters bleeds into the external reality. Remedios the Beauty's ascension is the physical manifestation of a spirit too pure and uncomprehending for a grasping, corporeal world. The yellow butterflies that constantly surround Mauricio Babylonia are not just a pretty image, they are the visible aura of his obsessive, doomed love for Mine, a love that is both beautiful and a harbinger of disaster. The insomnia plague that sweeps through Macondo is a collective manifestation of the loss of memory. The towns slide into a state of historical amnesia where words lose their meaning and objects must be labeled to be remembered. This isn't just a fantasy illness, it's a diagnosis of a society losing its past, becoming a hollow shell of present sensations without context. For the Buendias and for Macondo, the supernatural is the natural state of being when memory is as solid as a ghost and solitude is as tangible as a swarm of butterflies. Even the humor in the novel is tinged with the sadness of this isolation. The comic hyperbole of Aureliano Segundo's eating contests with the elephant, or the sheer scale of Colonel Aureliano Buendia's 17 identical sons, all marked with a cross of ash, creates a sense of the grotesque and the absurd. But beneath the laughter is a profound loneliness. Aureliano Segundo is so empty that he must literally fill himself with food and noise. The 17 Aurelianos are not a family, they are a collection, an army of copies who are systematically hunted down and killed, their shared identity making them an easy target. Their story is a brief, violent interruption, emphasizing the futility of their father's attempts at connection through procreation. He creates life but cannot nurture it, another symptom of his inability to breach his own solitude. The final act of the novel is the ultimate confluence of these themes. The last Aureliano, Aureliano Babylonia, is perhaps the most intellectually gifted of the Buendias, yet he is also the most isolated, raised within the confines of the decaying house. He falls in love with his aunt, Amaranta Ursula, and for a brief, incandescent moment, it seems the curse might be broken. Their love is not born of bitterness or obsession, but of genuine passion and companionship. They are, for a short time, the only happy beings in the history of the family. They are so consumed with each other that they fail to notice the final onslaught of decay. The ants, which Ursula had fought her entire life, finally overwhelm the house, a symbol of nature's patient, inexorable reclamation. Their love, which seems like a salvation, is in fact the final fulfillment of the prophecy. They produce the family's final child, the long-dreaded offspring of an incestuous union, who is born with the tail of a pig. This is not a moral punishment for incest. In the logic of Macondo, incest is the ultimate expression of the Buendia solitude, an inability to look for love outside the suffocating confines of the self and the family. It is the family turning inward to the point of collapse. The birth of the child and the death of Amaranta Ursula leave Aureliano alone with the parchments. As he finally deciphers Melquiades's manuscript, he understands everything. He is not just reading a prophecy, he is reading the history of his family, his own life, as it is happening. The parchments are a history written before the fact, confirming the Buendias' lack of free will. They were always trapped in the spiral of their own nature. The text states that the first of the line is tied to a tree and the last of the line is being eaten by the ants. As he reads these words, a cyclone begins to tear Macondo from the face of the earth. He realizes that he will never leave the room, that once he finishes reading, his own story and the story of his family will be complete. This final solitude is absolute. He is the last man on earth to possess the full memory of his lineage, and he possesses it only for the instant before his own annihilation. The destruction of Macondo by the wind is the final, violent erasure. The novel ends with the line, "Races condemned to 100 years of solitude did not have a second opportunity on earth." This is the ultimate loss. Not just the loss of a family or a town, but the loss of a history, wiped from memory as if it had never been. The 100-year cycle closes, and the world is scrubbed clean of the Buendias and their magnificent, tragic, and utterly solitary story. The memory that haunted them for a century is finally, and completely, extinguished. The novel is a ghost story where the primary ghost is the family's own inescapable character. It is a cautionary tale about the black holes that can form within families, vacuums of misunderstanding and self-obsession that pull everyone inward. It's a reminder that a house is not a home if its inhabitants are merely a collection of lonely hearts beating in separate rooms. The rain that falls for 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days does more than flood the town. It dissolves the fragile bonds of community, turning neighbors back into strangers and leaving each person to float alone in the morass of their own memories. The decay is not just of plaster and wood, but of empathy. And when empathy dies, a family, a town, an entire world, is condemned not just to solitude, but to oblivion. This temporal dislocation is mirrored in the family's relationship with space. The Buendía house itself becomes a labyrinth of solitude. It is constantly expanding, with Ursula adding rooms to accommodate the sprawling family, yet this expansion only creates more corners for loneliness to fester. Each Buendía claims a space that becomes a physical extension of their inner world. Colonel Aureliano Buendía's silver workshop is not just a room, it is a hermetically sealed chamber of obsessive repetition, its door a barrier against the messy demands of the world. Amaranta's porch, where she sits with her black bandage, becomes a public stage for her private misery. The room where Melquiades's parchments are kept is a pocket of a different reality, where the laws of physics are suspended and the air is thick with ancient knowledge, but it offers no connection, only a solitary, maddening puzzle. Even love, which should be the ultimate antidote to solitude, becomes its most potent catalyst. The love stories in Macondo are almost universally stories of obsession and miscommunication. Think of Meme Buendía and Mauricio Babylonia. Theirs is a clandestine, almost silent affair. Their communication is reduced to the flutter of yellow butterflies and furtive glances. Mauricio, a mechanic from the banana company's working class, is so far outside Meme's social sphere that their love can only exist in the shadows. The butterflies that signal his presence are a beautiful, magical element, but they are also a symbol of a love that is nonverbal, instinctive, and ultimately unable to articulate itself in the real world. When Fernanda del Carpio, Meme's mother, discovers the affair, her reaction is not one of parental concern but of horrified, class-based revulsion. She doesn't see a daughter in love, she sees a contamination of her family's perceived purity. By having Mauricio shot, severing his spine and condemning him to a lifetime of immobility, she isn't just ending a romance, she is enforcing a brutal, absolute solitude upon both lovers. Meme is sent to a convent where she remains silent for the rest of her life, her love locked inside her, unexpressed and unmourned. Mauricio dies alone, forgotten by all except the butterflies. Their story is a stark illustration of how the rigid structures of pride and social convention can become instruments of isolation, murdering connection before it has a chance to bloom. The character of Fernanda del Carpio is, in fact, a master architect of solitude. Raised in a desolate, high-altitude city of 32 belfries, she arrives in Macondo with a rulebook for a life that no one else understands or cares to follow. She institutes a reign of pointless etiquette, using golden chamber pots and corresponding with invisible doctors to maintain a fiction of aristocracy in a town of dust and magic. Her rigidity alienates her from everyone, especially her own husband, Aureliano II, who flees her cold formality for the warm, chaotic embrace of his mistress, Petra Coates. Fernanda's solitude is the loneliness of the perpetual outsider, the one who refuses to adapt and instead tries to bend the world to her will. She locks her illegitimate grandson, Aureliano Babylonia, in the house, not out of malice, but out of a deep-seated fear of the world's judgment and a desire to control every aspect of her reality. She creates a prison for him, and in doing so, perfects her own. Her letters, her rules, and her prayers are all one-way communications, sent out into a void from which she expects no reply. This inability to engage in dialogue is perhaps the most subtle and devastating aspect of the curse. It is the curse of the monologue. Each Buendía is the hero of their own epic, but they have no audience. Colonel Aureliano Buendía dictates his memoirs, but they are sterile and emotionless, failing to capture the truth of his experience. José Arcadio II tries to tell the story of the massacre, but the world has become deaf to it. Ursula speaks of the past, but the young see it as the ramblings of a senile old woman. Even Melquiades's parchments are a monologue spanning a century, written in a code that can only be deciphered when there is no one left to share the knowledge with. The final act of Aureliano Babylonia is one of pure reception. He reads, he understands, but he cannot speak. The story is revealed to him alone, and dies with him. The loss experienced by the family is not just of connection, but of meaning itself. As the insomnia plague demonstrated early in the town's history, when memory is lost, language becomes unmoored from reality. This happens again on a grander scale as the family decays. The heroic deeds of the colonel become meaningless tales. The family's wealth, generated by the magical fecundity of Petra Coates's animals, dissolves into nothing. The scientific discoveries of the founder are forgotten. All that is left are the raw, uncontextualized impulses: lust, rage, pride, sadness. Without a shared memory to give them meaning, these impulses become purely destructive, turning the family members into caricatures of their ancestors. They are not learning from the past, they are simply repeating its most basic errors, stripped of the original grandeur or purpose. Their story is a gradual semantic decay, a slow bleaching of meaning, until all that remains is the pig's tail, a signifier of an end point that has forgotten its beginning. Rebecca, brought to the house with a bag containing her parents' bones, embodies a solitude both feral and ancestral. Her compulsion to eat earth is a desperate, pre-linguistic attempt to consume the very ground of her loneliness, a search for belonging by ingesting the dirt. She is a creature of raw, unmediated grief. In stark contrast stands Pietro Crespi, the delicate Italian musician. He introduces a different kind of foreignness, the predictable, ordered world of mechanical music and clockwork toys. His pianola, with its programmed melodies, represents a civilized, passionless love utterly alien to the Buendía temperament. He offers a future of precision and gentle manners, but in Macondo, this is a language of ghosts. His sterile tools of courtship, musical scores, wind-up dancers, are no match for the family's violent, visceral needs. When Amaranta's emotional labyrinth proves too complex for his simple mechanics and Rebecca chooses the raw physicality of José Arcadio, Crespi's ordered world collapses. His suicide is the quiet implosion of a man whose systems have failed, whose rational solitude could not withstand the hurricane of irrational, intertwined loneliness that defined the household. His death demonstrates how even external agents of order and affection are ultimately consumed by the family's gravitational pull towards its own insular fate, becoming just another memory haunting the corridors. Gabriel García Márquez's works, though not including Mortal Shadows, A Century of Loss, masterfully capture the essence of these themes. His narratives remind us that loss is a constant companion, but through storytelling, we find meaning and connection. As we reflect on his legacy, may we embrace our own shadows with the same depth and grace, finding comfort in the shared human experience of mortality.